and truly out of the bag. Flexibility in the workplace is here to stay. Not for every company and not for every role, that's true, but overall, on balance, we're now in a world where remote work patterns and flexible hours are just part of the territory. Those who've tried to push back against them are the exception, not the rule. And while there are clear positives to flexibility from an individual's point of view, and clear challenges for companies to navigate, what's the overall verdict? Is flexibility a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I'll start with the case for flexibility. And from a talent acquisition and retention perspective, it's a clear winner. The more remote working a company or position allows, the broader geographically you can cast your net, which means access to a wider talent pool. And this is particularly useful if you're in a very competitive location. Think Cambridge in the UK or Cambridge, Massachusetts, for example, as you can reach outside the battleground of your local area and bring in talent from elsewhere. Flexible hours make opportunities more attractive to working parents, caregivers, or those with other commitments, which makes them feasible for groups that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to attract. The greater the flexibility on offer, the easier the sell to potential candidates as well. LinkedIn's research found in 2023 that 87% of workers would prefer to work remotely at least some of the time. And if you're planning to keep hold of your staff for a long time through life transitions and events, more flexibility is your friend as their priorities and commitments shift over the years. In fact, it's very difficult for people to adjust to less flexibility. So if you're more accommodating than most, it'll take much more for your team to consider other opportunities just based on this factor alone. Now, while claims about productivity are hotly debated, most of the research tends to show that remote working is, on balance, more productive than in-office work. 13% more productive, according to an off-cited Stanford University study. In-person work has its place too, of course, and the likelihood is that hybrid environments will become the most common arrangements over time, but for sheer productivity, remote working wins. Of course, attracting and retaining the best people, as we've already talked about, drives output too, so these effects are compounding and reinforcing each other. Greater flexibility also typically requires that employees take more ownership of their work. More ownership usually drives better results as long as you have the right people, the guidelines are clear, they understand the objectives and the parameters they're operating in, and they have the tools for the job. Now, those are plenty of ifs, of course, but we all apply more effort to things we feel more personally responsible for. And micromanagement is much harder from a distance, so there's more room for that ownership to develop in flexible environments. But what about the case against flexibility? Well, the most common reason that companies and leaders push back against providing it isn't productivity, it's control. And it's easy to belittle that and to say that managers should trust their teams. But the truth is that we all prefer more control and have to train ourselves to let go. When you can't see or hear what's happening, your unconscious assumption is likely to be that nothing is happening. And not having the feedback that in-person working provides creates a lot of anxiety for leaders that they have to learn to deal with in flexible environments. And flexibility only works if you have the right people and the right culture to make it work. The Society for Human Resource Management has reported that 36% of managers struggle to trust their employees in remote settings. And while some of that is for sure about the managers, some of it's about the employees too. As flexibility increases, it becomes much easier for people to exploit the system deliberately or inadvertently, and to underperform for longer before being noticed. Some of the companies who've rolled back their remote working policies over the last couple of years have done so because they want more control, but others have seen evidence that the costs of flexibility for their organisations are much greater than the rewards. Flexible working practices do also reduce spontaneous communication, which is a key driver of creativity and innovation. The work of Professor Thomas Allen at MIT Sloan has widely proven that serendipitous interactions in offices are essential for innovation and problem solving. And these interactions decrease exponentially as physical distance increases. Most companies that have research, innovation, or finding some sort of novel solutions at their core have implemented at the very least a hybrid rather than fully remote working policy, so that there remains some opportunity for serendipity to do its work. Finally, it's also just harder to run flexible teams. They require better leadership, clearer communication, and higher levels of trust. Poorly trained or inexperienced leaders will often struggle to manage distributed teams, whether that distribution is physical or temporal, as it is with flexible working hours. In research conducted by Deloitte, 47% of managers felt they were equipped to get great results from remote teams. Just 47%. The increased burden on leaders increases stress, causing greater rates of burnout and sickness and leading to widespread underperformance. Striking the right balance between trust and accountability can be an extremely tricky line to tread. Look, personally, I like working in the office, but my team have lots of flexibility in how much they come in and the hours they work. Flexibility isn't inherently good or bad, but it may or may not be right for your team, your objectives, your culture, and your environment. The advantages that come from flexibility carry a cost, but wherever you fall in this debate, it's likely that we'll all have to learn to build, operate, and run flexible businesses in the future. So you might as well start now.